Hey everybody, we're having a few technical difficulties with getting Brian Currie on board with our webinar. We do have Sandro Corsaro, who's the Chief Creative Officer of Fandango, St. John's Prep, class of 1994. Sorry, Sandro, I made you 10 years older there.
Wow.
I know you feel that way with two little kids running around, but behind the scenes, a couple of our staff are working to try and get Brian's audio up and working for us. So just in the interest of time, we know everybody's, people are on board. Sandro, can you talk a little bit about what it is that you do right now and what exactly is the role of a Chief Creative Officer at Fandango and maybe how you got to that role?
Yeah, you were breaking up a little bit there, but I think I get the gist of the question. You want to know kind of how did I get to where I am now? It's kind of a long road, but what I did was when I was at St. John's, this was like in the mid-90s. I wasn't really there yet, so but I always knew that I wanted to be a storyteller and work ultimately in animation. So I applied to a bunch of different schools, but I kind of knew that the roads for the entertainment industry were least. So I studied art and animation there. It was right at the beginning of kind of, you can imagine, computer animation and Toy Story. Kind of the internet along that. So what I learned was the fundamentals of like storytelling and drawing and narrative, but I was using kind of technology to help me. And I became an animator really, and I loved it, and it was great for a certain period of time. And then, like everything else, you mature, and a couple of years kind of into working on TV shows and commercials.
Sandro, I'm not sure. I think you're a little garbled right now. I think the internet gods are not in our favor right now. I don't know if it's for everybody or just for me, but got most of it.
Well, ultimately, I started in animation. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. So I started as an animator. I went out to USC for college, and I worked as an animator, which was a very, very tough competitive field. I worked in lots of different movies and TV shows and commercials, and it was a real hustle and an extremely competitive business, as I'm sure Brian will talk about. And I faced an incredible medium of the internet that was coming. Learning a lot about those skills, and there was this kind of marriage between what I learned traditionally as an animator and the internet. There's a program called Flash, which is at the very beginning of kind of the century, and I became pretty good at that. And I ended up using that to make pilots and advertisements and websites. Ultimately, I ended up making a short film, which I ended up selling to Disney, and it became the TV show called an animated series called produced for a number of years. But in the back of my mind, and even before I did that, I was working at Disney as a creative director for Disney.com. And that was right at the beginning where Disney, Bob Iger, who was the CEO, had come in. He had acquired Pixar, he had worked with Steve Jobs, and they were going to modernize Disney. And so I was very young, not that much older than the people that are probably watching this. I was probably maybe 29 years old, which is like eons from now. But and it was a really cool time to be at Disney, and I learned a lot about storytelling and digital media. And at the same time, the TV show was going, and then I went over and did that. And when the TV show ended, I was able to take kind of a year off, and I think that's important to kind of have a break. And Fandango was going through a very similar exercise that Disney went on a smaller scale, but they were going to regalvanize kind of what they wanted to do, just not being about movie tickets, but being all things movies. And my current boss, the CEO of Fandango, was at Disney. And a lot of what I think we may talk about today is about relationships, and that resumes are great, and there's certainly gigs and jobs that I've gotten through resumes. But the bigger jobs that you'll probably get in your life will probably be because no one's ever asked me, like, can I see your transcripts from USC or St. John's? It's about the work that you do and the people that you know, and it has a lasting impression on people. So ultimately, when I got to Fandango, we went through a long process of kind of what is Fandango going to mean? What do we want it to mean beyond just movie tickets? We went out and acquired Movieclips and Rotten Tomatoes and Flixster, and we just we're about in the process of acquiring Voodoo
Can you hear me?
and Walmart to kind of surround content.
I think, not to interrupt, I think Brian Currie is on with us now. Is that you, Brian?
Yeah, it's me. You can hear me. You can't see me. I think that's a favor to everyone.
Yeah, I've been told often I have a face made for radio. Thanks, Brian, for joining us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Sorry about this. I had some guys work on my computer that I get, so things won't get broken into. And son of a gun, I can't break into it myself. So sorry about that, fellas.
That's all right. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate your time. So Sandro was just talking a little bit about his experience at Disney, and Sandro actually, Kick Bukowski was one of the Hardiman family favorites for a long period of time early on when our kids were younger. So I saw many of your characters early on. Brian, can you talk a little bit about the work that you do and how you got into screenwriting and how things how you've achieved the success you've achieved today?
Well, it's interesting. Writing was always beaten into us at St. John's Prep fondly, and actually a teacher there, a few teachers there really drilled into me to pursue writing, because for some reason I had a knack for it. I love telling stories. I come from a family that tells great stories, funny stories, and I took that into college and kind of honed the craft a little bit. And then when I went to Los Angeles, of course, like everyone else, I went up to Los Angeles to be an actor first, and that didn't take long before I figured out time to start writing.
Okay.
So then I just started writing about my experiences in Hollywood initially. Wrote my first two actually I sold to Paramount Studios that were directly related to my experiences out in Los Angeles, and then thank God that I acquired some skill in pitching movies and then writing them, and the rest is kind of history. So it's been a fun ride. It's been very enjoyable, and I attribute so much of it to the hard work instilled in me at St. John's Prep.
That's awesome. Sandro was talking earlier about the importance of relationships, and one of the things we're constantly talking to our students about, especially as they're moving forward, is looking at networking and building connections. Can you guys talk each from your own experience about how, in some ways, whether it be the prep network or other networks, have helped you to achieve success and achieve your dreams?
Sandro, you want to start that one?
Yeah, I think we know kind of.
Hey, Sandro, your audio is coming in all scrabbled right now. Maybe what we can do is, why don't I switch it over to Brian, and if you keep your video going, and then do you want to try and dial in so that you can we can get better audio? Awesome. So
you want me to okay.
Yeah, Sandro, you have the there's a dial-in number that Lisa Miles emailed you, so you should have a dial-in number on the email that you got.
I'll do that.
Great. So Brian, you tossed it to Sandro. The internet gods tossed it back to you.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time today. Well, as far as connections are concerned, first of all, it's interesting. At St. John's, there weren't necessarily connections that got me into the entertainment field, but I will say this: it's the friendships that I made at St. John's Prep that kept me going during the hard times. And I'll tell you, I'm gonna do some shout outs to guys like Rob Kennedy and Chris Davis and Ralph Sestry and Kevin Pierce and Glenn Sherlock, Brian Kelly, all good friends. And they were always there when I had to call and say, hey, listen, did I make the right decision coming out to Los Angeles and working hard? My family as well. So the connections you make as friends and family are so important in any career you make, because when you feel like, oh my God, I failed, you can fall back on those friendships. As far as Los Angeles is concerned, it's tough because when I first came out, someone told me something, and it's true. 95% of the people, actually 5% of the people do 95% of the work, and the key is to get into that 5%. It's one of the few times that it's one of, like, say, the Screen Actors Guild or the Writers Guild or the Producers Guild. I mean, the unions and the unions where nobody's working. I mean, it's so few people that are actually working in there. If it was a plumbers union and 5% of the people were working, someone's doing something wrong. But there's so much competition out here that you got to get yourself in there. You got to kind of weed through people that are kind of feeding you bad advice. Some people, you come out and they don't want to work as hard, and there's so much opportunity out here to have a good time and enjoy yourself in the sunshine. Right now we have an 85-degree day and it's beautiful out and everything else. There's a lot of excuses not to sit down and write. There's a lot of excuses not to sit down and memorize your lines, and you just got to fight through those. I mean, social distancing for a writer is just another Friday night.
Yeah, I was gonna, you talk about how your friends and the shout out you gave from your classmates of '79, which is awesome. Have kind of sustained you. One of the themes we've talked about with a lot of the different people as we've been doing these different episodes is resilience and perseverance. Before you hit it big with Green Book, I'm sure there were a lot of challenges in the midst of writing and some misses here and there. What sustained you and what kind of animated you to kind of continue with the dream of moving forward before you met with the award-winning success with Green Book?
Well, initially what sustains you was just the thrill of the entertainment field, and it is a lot of fun and it is very enjoyable. It's also such a creative process, and when you come out and when you try to get involved with it, you're dealing with fun, interesting people. And I mean, out here you're meeting people that want to be, at the top of music, at the top of acting, writing, producing. They're just fun, interesting people. So even during the down times, a casual conversation is usually fun and interesting, and you learn something from them. And I'll tell you what, in many respects, it's sometimes just the last, holding on the longest. You have to hold on. I asked many people on the way to getting where I'm at, what's it going to take? And he said, well, first of all, one guy, particularly Bill Bernstein, a very interesting guy, he said, everybody's scared when they come out here. Everybody is. And even people that are still in the business. He said, Steven Spielberg's scared about it. He's hoping his next movie, is as good as his last movie. And so, use the fear. Don't worry. Everyone's in it together in the entertainment field. It's a very picky business. You never step on anyone. And I see it out here and I hate to see that. But, sometimes you have to step over people, you have to, because some people aren't going to put the time in, or they just want to leave. And there can be a lot of negativity, and you have to avoid negativity. And then you just keep coming, keep plowing through. I was lucky enough once I started pitching movies, because I love telling stories, and I said I come from a family of storytellers, that pitching came naturally to me. So when I went into studios and I told them my story, whatever story I was speaking about, whether it was a horror movie or whether it was a thriller or something like that, I got them laughing, or they got interested, or they interjected, they put their own thoughts on it, or this ending would be good. And when you do that, you get them involved, and next they want to buy it. And I was lucky enough for the first 10 movies I pitched, they bought the first 7. So I was like, oh, geez, I have a knack for that. And then everything started going very well after that. And then my mother got sick, unfortunately, and I came back, and that kind of put a halt. It's out of sight, out of mind in almost any business. So coming back, it was fantastic reacquainting myself with all my friends from St. John's Prep. But at the same time, people lose your phone number out in Hollywood, and it's to be expected, And then when I came back, I realized I really better buckle down, and your real friends from the past always step up. So it was fantastic, coming back.
Awesome. I think Sandro is out there. I'm not sure. I saw
here.
All right, great. That's great. One of the questions that came in, and Brian, is directed towards you, is kind of getting a script looked at and kind of being noticed without an agent is really difficult, and finding an agent is something that's hard to do. Any recommendations from your experience, Brian and Sandro, if you have anything to chime in as well on how to find an agent?
Brian, go ahead. I'll let you take that. I have a bizarre.
Oh no, you know, honestly, believe it or not, how about this? This time you guys went out, so I didn't hear that question. How about that? We're having a hard time here. Can you say that again? Can you say that question again?
Sure. The question was, it's really hard to get a script looked at without an agent, and finding an agent or a manager has proved really hard. And do you have any recommendations on finding an agent?
I would say this: nobody is an advocate for yourself. And my mother used to say this: if you don't believe in yourself, who's going to believe in you? So before you even think of agents, and so many people are focused on whether they're actors about their headshots and about their reel. It's how much work are you willing to put into it? So you have to forget about an agent for a second. If you decide to get into the business, you have to be your best advocate. You've got to be the one who promotes yourself, willing to get up early and do things. So that's just the beginning of it. And then things have changed since I began. Back in the old days, to get an agent as an actor, for example, you had to have great headshots. You had to have tape on yourselves. It helped you a lot if you were doing a play in Hollywood where all the agents could come by and watch you. I'll tell you what, when you went to an audition, you had better know your lines, and you better, and I hate to say it, pressure's on, you're sweating, but you only have, a few minutes to make an impression. So to get an agent in that respect, back then, there was a lot of sweating. It was like the movie Flashdance. You were sweating before you went into a room. Nowadays, everything's on video and Vimeo and all these other things. And so you can just do it right from sitting at your house. And the good news is you get 10 takes to do it right once. As far as a writer is concerned, it's best to have a few short stories and some nice scripts that when they sit there and go, you know what, we heard about you. Can we look at some of your stuff? You better have stuff you're confident in that you can send them. And you better grab them on the first 5 pages, because if you don't, oftentimes there's a stack. It's actually disappointing when you walk in some of these studio rooms and you see a stack of scripts that are just discarded. He's like, oh my God, that's what happened to it. Catch them in the first 5 pages, pay attention. Every single screenplay is just a simple, a guy climbs a tree in Act 1, people throw rocks at him and apples at him in Act 2, and in Act 3 he either finds a way out or he falls out of the tree and dies. And basically, write your screenplays like that, but very interesting, and make sure that you hand agencies your best screenplays. And hopefully they give you a call back and say you got something else, and then you go in for an interview, and if you can get them in there, it'd be great. Otherwise, work on your own and send them out on your own. Again, you're your own best advocate. So.
Great, thanks. Sandro, you said you had a story in the world of agents as well?
Yeah, I think Brian's kind of hitting the nail on the head. You got to put yourself out there. Every day I used to get up, and before I used to go to work, I was working at the time at MTV doing like pilots, and I would get up early and I would go to a Starbucks like 2 hours before work, and I would work on what became Kick Buttowski. And one day a guy came in and he saw me drawing there, and he said, "What is that?" I was drawing in a coffee shop, which people didn't do this back then. Like I had a tablet. I would draw on this tablet and it would show up on the screen. And the guy said, "What is that?" I said, "Oh, I'm working on this whole cartoon that I think I want to make." He said, "Oh, play it for me." So I took it out and he watched it. He said, "That's really good." And he knew a guy that was an agent that's how kind of I ended up getting hooked up with an agent. And if I always think, like, if I hadn't got up that morning, if I hadn't committed to kind of the 2 hour kind of workout I used to call it at the beginning, what if that guy hadn't come in there? Like, you can call it luck, but at the same time, kind of to Brian's point, you have to have the discipline to put in the work. And I definitely think, like, and not that we want to sound like a bunch of geezers here, but like, the internet is your friend. That wasn't around for Brian and myself. The ability to put your work out there, if you're interested in a visual medium, like I work in animation for many years, not having to send a portfolio or to go into an office, but to actually put your work out there on YouTube or Instagram or whatever you think is the right platform for your tone, which is a completely different conversation, but that's a huge thing, to go out there and say, hey, people are engaged with my work. Look at the comments that are on my work. Look at the views that are on my work. Look at how people react to my work, how I move people or make them laugh.
or how I express myself creatively. And agencies are changing too. People that Brian and I have are work with, they understand that, and they're actually looking for that now too. Social didn't used to be a big thing when it first started. It's become a very big, powerful mover now. So I definitely think if you're interested and you don't have a website, or you're not putting stuff on, not even having a website, if you're not putting stuff on social handles, you're making a pretty big mistake for something that's pretty awesome to have out there. It's an open calling card for the whole world to see your work.
Great. Yeah, no, it's a great opportunity to use it. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
So Sandro's point concerning the being at Starbucks at the right time, it is amazing that, in my history, when I first came out, I didn't know anybody, and so I just so happened to be working at nightclubs at the time. This is a long time ago, and it's amazing how you made so many connections. It's just people walking in. I worked at Sylvester Stallone's club, and I worked at Mickey Rourke's club, and I worked at Madonna's club, and I worked at who else is that was so many guys, and so you'd meet people coming in. You didn't bug them. I will say this for all the the students out there. It doesn't help you to go up and ask for autographs and selfies, to be honest with you. A lot of times that doesn't help. You shake their hand and you tell them what you do, and you say, hopefully we meet someday, and I appreciate your work. And that's what I did left and right. And luckily, going into studios, and every once in a while, I'd run into those people, and they'd be like, hey, what are you doing right now? And holy, I remember you back in those days. You're a nice guy. And that's how I actually started meeting people and getting indoors. I didn't have an agent, so I had to kind of self-promote, but I never was overbearing, because once you do that, people just lose your number. And so Kaya, to Sandro's point, it's kind of where you are. If you're at the right place at the right time, it takes a lot of luck, just as much as anything else.
So a couple of questions that are coming in from some of our students and young alums. I'll try and combine them and hopefully do them justice. But you guys are both at the top of your games. As a young alum who's looking to kind of get into the world of the entertainment industry, what are some other areas that people could get into? And as a high school student, what should I be doing right now to prepare myself to kind of to be able to get into the entertainment world, whether it's in whatever it may be, but how do I prepare myself to get into the worlds that you're in right now?
Sandro?
Yeah, I think there's two things. One, there's lots of diversity, and certainly what Brian does, it's storytelling, I think, at its purest, right? Putting words on paper. And so I'll let Brian talk about that. I would love to kind of pivot the question a little bit, maybe into the business itself of kind of like of entertainment. I think everyone, regardless of whether you want to be an actor, you want to be a writer, you want to be an animator, people should, at a young age, just like when I was a kid, I'd go through like the sports section and read about what's going on with Larry Bird or whatnot.
Yeah.
You should to go on to. I know it sounds kind of goofy if you're in high school, but like you should go on Variety. You should read Deadline. You should see what's going on in the industry. You should pay attention to trends. What is happening in the world of platforms? Look at companies like Amazon that used to sell books, and now they're potentially up for award season. And pay attention to what's going on in terms of movie theaters and where Netflix is at. And these are things that I know that a lot of our young alum and high school the students are consuming, but pay attention to them as a business and start to understand how that ultimately upstream and downstream affects people like Brian or myself, that, and we're part of that food chain, right? And so, Netflix has kind of like took a business model that was in place for 100 years, right? Founded by, the Disneys and the Foxes, and literally shook it up in like less than 10 years, completely shook everything up and put Blockbuster out of business, by the way. So you got to pay. I'm a big believer in looking at history and reading about understanding the models of how content is ultimately consumed, whether it's through a theater, whether it's through a movie screen, whether it's through your home, whether it's through an iPhone, and understanding those patterns and what the ramifications are so that you can potentially put yourself in the right spot at the right time, because the world is changing. The world is changing, and the next generation of animators, the next generation of screenwriters the next generation of actors will probably have a different path than what we had.
Yeah, I know that's it's so true. And from on my angle, I would say this as far as a young person coming out and trying to give it a shot or giving it a shot. Draw from your own life's experiences, and so what I would say is, live your life, and so you can write them down later on. I mean, everything in a script is emotion and laughter and everything else, and so as far as writing is concerned, draw from your experiences. If you decide to, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to get into the entertainment field, and I'm going to New York or Los Angeles. Commit to it. Don't do it, halfway. If you're going to do it, give yourself a time. I mean, maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's less, or maybe it's more. But either way, have a goal, set your goals, write your goals down, and then commit to it wholeheartedly. Read everything you can read. Find out in the trades what's happening. Don't, and I see this out here too, and I saw this so much when I was early in my career. People feel like they, I don't know if they're living a movie in their own head, but they come out to Los Angeles and they stop talking to their friends back home, and they stop dealing, they stop, talking to their family and stuff because they want to come back, as stars. And that's the worst thing you can do. Rely on your family, rely on your friends for support. They may be becoming dentists and lawyers and Wall Street people, but they want to hear from you, and they're not going to be judgmental. So it's a support team. That's your emotional support team, because it's a rough business that a lot of times you're going to hear a lot of no's before you hear a yes. Don't let it bother you. Talk to your friends and laugh about it if you can, and keep plugging forward and write and read as much as you can. And you know what? The bottom line is quality will prevail. If you write something well, it will be found. And just persistence. Just don't give up. If you feel this is what you need to do, don't give up.
That's great advice, and a lot of what we're. Go ahead, Sandro.
I think the other thing that Brian's bringing up too is in terms of putting yourself out there, and I really mean this sincerely. There has never been a better time to be a creative person, not only just because of how you can put your work out there. There are more buyers than there ever have been, ever in the history of content. I mean, when Brian and I roughly started out here, certainly from our experience, there were 5 places you could take something. There were literally 5 companies that did that would buy scripts or buy shows, right? And then when I was doing a kids animated show, there were 3 places: it was Cartoon Network, there was Disney Channel, and Nickelodeon. Right? And that wasn't that long ago. If you look at 8 years later, there's Cartoon Network, there's Nickelodeon, and there's Disney, and then there's Disney Plus, and then there's Netflix, and then there's Amazon. Then you can sell stuff to Facebook. I mean, it's YouTube
Right.
TV. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. And so and for those, for the prep kids that are listening, that's simple supply and demand, right? There's more demand out there than ever. And that is something that's radically changed in the last 10 years.
It sure is. I remember the days of sneaking into Warner Brothers. I used to sneak into the studios. I mean, I'd sit there and I'd put folders under my arm and walk by and walk past the gate. Hope, sweat as I'm walking towards it, like I was crossing Checkpoint Charlie. And hopefully you get in. Hopefully you'd get in. And times have changed since then, that's for sure.
Sandro, just so you know, Jason Navarro, one of your classmates, is tuned in and wishes you well, and congratulations on the new baby. And Brian Sutcliffe, one of your old teachers, is out there and says, he's disappointed you didn't go into biology, but he guesses you've done okay.
Do we know what secret is? Oh, I know. I know who that is. Let me tell you. Thank God I didn't. Yeah. I mean, I wish. Believe it or not. It's funny, as when I went to St. John's, I still do. I love biology, and I was thinking someday, because I love animals as well, I was like, it'd be great to be a vet, and I still think it'd be great being a vet. I'd love to be a vet, but I just didn't do it. Took a turn west.
The last question I want to put out to you guys is we've talked a lot, in kind of a two-part question. We talked a lot about with our students about, excellence isn't about perfection. Excellence is about learning from mistakes. Rebounding and getting up when you get knocked down. And second, we talk a lot about really finding mentors and influencing situations and people in a positive way. Can you guys talk a little bit about experiences in your own journeys, whether at St. John's or professional, about kind of when you had to bounce back, and who are some of the key mentors you had in your journey and how they impacted you, and whether or not you had the opportunity to serve as a mentor to others right now?
Sandro?
Yeah, I remember vividly in the old gym seeing the words "believe in excellence" at the prep, and I think that's something my parents were really big about. I think that was something that the prep was really great about. I certainly had some of the best teachers I've ever had in my life. I remember Dana Smith's history tests were like harder than anything I experienced in college. And so it gave you kind of confidence when you got out to USC. I was like, this is going to be a breeze. I think a big part of I think a big part of the prep experience was confidence, for me at least. I definitely felt confident. Obviously it's a very privileged place to be, but you're also dealing with people that are, I felt, extremely competitive, whether it was academics, whether it was sports. You're a very competitive environment. However, it's nothing like Los Angeles. And I think Brian and I want to reiterate, and we're not trying to scare people from coming out here. It's just, someone told me this a long time ago when I was a kid at the Museum of Fine Arts, because I told him I wanted to be a professional cartoonist and have an animated show. And this guy told me, good luck. That's like becoming a professional baseball player. And the truth is, it is like that. Like it is for Brian to win an Academy Award, or for myself to have created a television show. Those are very difficult things. And if you don't have the guts, you got to have the commitment, the guts, and the belief that you can excel and you can get better. You're not going to be perfect, but you're going to get better, and you're going to be willing to kind of add fuel to the fire. Not anger, but there will be disappointment, there will be rejection, and you have to be able to internalize that and to listen to it, to really listen and say, is there something in there beyond the guy telling me this is not good that I need to learn from? It's not good because ... I had one of my first meetings at Sony, and I was 17. I graduated St. John's at 17. I came to LA that September. In October, I went to Sony to meet with a guy who was the head of Sony Animation at the time, because there was a relationship that a customer at my dad's shoe store had with a guy who knew a guy at Sony. And so I get there. I'm wearing a suit. I'm 17 years old. I'm wearing a suit. I walk into Sony. I meet this guy. He had a huge office, an office that I'll never forget. It had a fireplace in it. It was like something out of like the 1920s. And he's eating M&Ms. He's laying on a couch, and he looks at my little tiny, and honestly, it was a crappy little portfolio. And he literally, honestly, he was such an a-hole to me. But hear me out. The manner in which he spoke to me wasn't great. He goes, yeah, this is all okay. You really can't do anything great. You can do some things okay, but you have such a long way to go. And he threw it back to me. And of course, like, that's not a great way to talk to like a 17-year-old kid coming out to LA. But guess what? That was the reality. And I remember thinking, like, of course I was devastated and I was emotional after, but I remember using that as fire, because there was lots more of that was to come over the next 4 or 5 years of my life. I remember using that and thinking, was he right? I looked at it and said, yeah, I think I am doing a lot of things. I'm trying to do a lot of different things, but I got to focus on what I know, which is ultimately characters and storytelling, not trying to do backgrounds, not trying to do special effects. I got to focus on that. And to not let the message sometimes, the delivery of the message, the rejection cloud what the message is. That's how you begin to excel. That's how you accept criticism, constructive and sometimes unconstructive. And that's how you use it and turn that inertia kind of into a positive thing for yourself, and to say, I'm going to commit to getting better. I'm going to commit to a long road here, and I'm going to push myself. And along the way, yeah, you meet mentors. My boss, the CEO of Fandango, Paul Yanover, is someone that I've known now, since I was almost like, at Disney in 2006. And he happens to be my boss, but I look at him as a role model, as a father, as a husband, as a manager, as a leader. I've been very fortunate to have that person in my life. And there's other people. There's lots of other people too. When I worked on my show, the executive that I worked with, that you get notes from, which everyone despises usually, a very calm person, and taught me a lot about the art form of giving criticism, the art form. And Brian, I'm sure, has a million stories about how people give notes and how they talk to him and how they help guide kind of the narrative. But yeah, in general, like I said, the most important thing is don't just accept criticism as criticism, accept it as a way to potentially get yourself better and fuel that fire that you want to succeed.
That's great. Brian, anything you want to add to that?
Absolutely. Yeah. First of all, that's all so true. And you have to have a thick skin. You got to be able to hear no and just walk out of the room and not take it personal. I mean, as far as from St. John's prep, my mentors out there run the gamut from Fred Glass, the coach of the football team, who always, he's a fun guy and a funny guy, but he was tough. But, he always was, ribbing us and making us stand in front of the whole team and say things. I mean, it was a lot of back and forth, and it was fun, and it was always funny, and it made you an outgoing person and helped me tremendously out here. And Brother Santoro, who ran, I don't know how he's doing. I haven't kept in touch with him, but he used to run the theater department, and I used to work in the theater department. Even though I was on the football team, I go over and work at it with Rob Kennedy and would build sets and things like that. And they used to win the New England, theater festival every year. And I just loved watching how talented these people were. But as far as coming to stories out in Los Angeles, it's interesting. When I first got out here, now I drove across country in an old car, and it broke down in the parking lot of a Vons near Disney. And so I'm just waiting. What it did is overheated. So I was waiting for it to stop. And I decided it was so hot that I walked into Vons to cool off. And this is back 89. And I had a Red Sox hat on, and I heard Ted Williams, my favorite player. And I turned around, and it's Jonathan Winters. Now, I love Jonathan Winters, and I grew up with Hay sisters, all my mother's sisters. We call them the Hay sisters, and that's, in fact, Six Sisters is my LLC. But so we started speaking, and he's so funny, and he was so engaging. And we walked to the car. Now, I know my car is not going to start, so I didn't even want to embarrass myself. And so I'm just leaning against my car, and he came out to Los Angeles to be a cartoonist. So he had some paper in his car, and he drew cartoons for my family back east. And he said, I'll tell you what, I like you. I want you to meet my agent. So I said, oh, this is unbelievable. Jonathan Winters' agent. This is incredible. So started the car up, finally started. He goes, meet him in this room at the Beverly Hills Hotel, tomorrow at 10. So I put my best suit on. I got all the stuff. I had everything I'd ever written under my arm. I had 8x10s, pictures, commercial shots, so smiling shots. I was so excited. I knew the car was barely going to make it to the Beverly Hills Hotel. I'm looking for the room. It's a barbershop at the Beverly Hills Hotel. I go into the barbershop. And there's Jonathan Winters' agent laying down. He's got his face covered with a hot towel, his whole face covered with a hot towel. And he's getting a manicure with the hot towel on his face before the guy shaves his face. And I go, hi, I'm here to meet, Joe Schmo, whatever his name was. And he said, yeah, it's me. Threw the towel. Never took the towel off. And I said, Jonathan Winters said you may be interested in being my agent. The guy goes, leave your stuff on the sink. And that was it. It didn't even come out of his towel. I was like, wow. I mean, you've got to walk out of there and laugh at that and say, you know what? This is Hollywood. People really don't care. You have to be your own best friend out here many times. And I'm sure, as Sandro will say, you have to be, if you don't know anybody, initially when you start, you've got to be comfortable with your own company, because you're going to spend a lot of time, in coffee shops and walking around by yourself, and you can't let the loneliness get you. You're out here for a mission, and stay on the mission. So anyway, that's just
we're gonna. You guys have been phenomenal, and whatever. I'm getting a couple texts from people behind the scenes. What we'd love to do is at some other point in time, we're gonna kind of have some other conversations with you each separately, because you have so much to add and you've had such rich experiences. Because of the internet difficulties, we're not going to be able to show you the videos, but what we're going to do in a moment is shift over to play the student videos about how to survive remote learning. They're 2 minutes each. So those that are out there watching, you get to see some of our student creative work. Brian and Sandro, what we'd love to do is be able to send a link to you. You can see them on Vimeo. And if you can give us some input, we will announce a winner in the next few days, just kind of so it takes the pressure off. You don't have to judge in real time. But I really want to thank both of you for being a part of this conversation. I said earlier to Sandro before we went live, you know, our students and our alums have had a phenomenal opportunity to talk with professional athletes, to talk with those who are really high in business, to talk with those who've been very successful in the creative world. And it just goes to show the extraordinary strength and depth and breadth of the Prep Network. So thank you both for your time this afternoon. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. St. John's Prep, best experience. I just go St. John's Prep. One of the funnest time of my life and a great experience. So thank you so much.
Awesome. So we're going to switch over to, thanks, Sandro. Thanks, Brian. We're going to switch over to the videos right now. And at the end, my colleague Kevin Collins is going to come on board. I need to jump off for another meeting. And then Sandro and Brian, if you guys can send us your email vote, send it to Nibal Awad and Alumni Relations as to which video was the best. We'll announce that later on. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to tune out, and Kevin and the videos are up next. Have a good rest of the day.
Hey all, we're just going to be getting to the videos in 1 second.
Well, it looks like remote learning is going to be till the end of the year. What do I do with this time?
Well played. You now have 5 minutes to hide, starting now. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Our next song today on Survival Songs Sundays, only on Smooch 109, is COVID-19 Survival Guide by the artist formerly known as Chili's 2 for $20 Menu, aka Little Lost Hubcap, aka Sam Balo. Hey. Here's how to survive COVID-19. Let's go! Drink water. Drink water. Eat food. It's not expired. Wear a mask. On your face. Stay at home. Stay order. No handshakes. Don't touch hands. Don't give hugs. That's not cool. Social distance. 6 feet. Don't use 5G. Wait, what? Barricade. Okay, hold on. Board the windows. No, wait. Get a bat. That's not helpful. Put nails in it. I don't agree. Watch for zombies. Oh god. Watch for full moon. That's werewolves. It's the apocalypse. I'm leaving. No one's safe. Can I get my lunch waiver?
Hi, we just want to thank everyone for tuning in and for being part of the webinar today. We have more guests coming up, and it's going to be an exciting lineup now through the first couple weeks of June. So stay tuned to your email. We'll be announcing guests as they are booked. If you have additional questions, please feel free to send them in now before the webinar ends. And we're going to be following up with Sandro and Brian so that we can do some video judging for the students and announce a winner in the next couple days. So thank you again for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you on the next Live Since You Asked. Take care.